Okay, guys, time's up. Let's move to another topic. If you guys still have some questions, feel free to type it in so I can answer them. Basically, I guess we will have some extra 10 times before we finish our lectures today, so I can answer those. In the meantime, I decided to make some sort of like a switch in our original agenda. So right now, we are finally moving to the data and to the segmentation. So essentially, oops, 1 second. So essentially, you guys already start building a part of your segmentation analysis, personas. So the personas, ideally, again, ideally, is the outcome of your customer segmentation analysis. So there are like many different methods on how you can run this segmentation and everything else, but in the end of the day, it's basically analyze the disproportions, the characteristics of your groups of customers, as well as to test different marketing propositions based on the findings, based on the insight you obtained from those groups of people. So why do we overall use a segmentation? Again, when we need to improve user experience, engagement, or the conversion. And customer journey map is one of the probably visual representation, not really supported by the data at the point when we were doing this. But if you add to the equation of the customer journey map some information, for example, stored it in the Excel file and showing the progression from a lead state to the marketing qualified lead, to the sales qualified lead, to opportunity, and then to the actual sale, you will see that everything will be all pieced together very well. So because basically the idea is to give you theory first and then the practice second. So then you will be able to replicate or to mimic everything you learned at your work, or at least start asking the questions you probably didn't ask, or frame it in a different way. So that's the whole idea. So basically, for the segmentation, we are interested in analyzing groups of people or the personas, but in the qualitative way. So that can be something that similar to the customers who try to or prefer to shop very fast, rapidly, basically pick up services or grab and go services like coffee in McDonald's or Starbucks, or people who shop on a multiple device, or people who use or access our website of different services only on one device. So basically the segmentation, there are like multiple, I would say even limitless number of ideas or the segments you can come up with. It all has to be relevant to your business. So the important part is understanding what you actually trying to analyze and what kind of segmentation analysis you will be running. So there are like two main types of segmentation: a priori and post hoc. So basically the difference between them is the control you're having over your data. A priori, it's the best probably way of controlling and to collecting data in the systematic way, because technically you're responsible for the data capturing, data collection, and the data design. So think in the next way. You are interested in the collecting information from the people who just had recent shopping experience in your store. So you may send them an email saying like, please fill in our survey and enter the participation or get some sort of like a discount, I don't know, 5–10% in our store for your next purchase. But at the same time, you encourage them to share their experience, the information, and to fill anything you want. So you are the party, or your company is the party who is choosing variables, segments, data, and the complexity. Complexity is something which will be applied to the particular problem. So for example, if we're talking about interactions with your business, for example, how well our pricing proposition was well tied to the pricing and the support we are offering. Let's think about the electronic devices. You're purchasing an iPhone and we are offering extended warranty, and our price is slightly expensive, but in another store, they offer warranty, which is not included in the cell phone price. But the thing is that if you want to buy warranty separately, it will cost them, for example, $50 or $100 more. So Complexity here will be defined only by you and by the question you're trying to answer, or the hypothesis you're having about your customers. Post hoc is a different type. It's basically taking all the information you have in your CRM databases about the customer, past transactions, when the customer first was created, is he or she enrolled in any sort of like a loyalty programs, discount cards, did that person came from, for example, paid campaign, digital campaign, found you organically, etc. So it would be very hard to jungle and to put all the numbers in a very structured way here. So the complexity here is high because you would need to spend some time figuring out the best approach and the way you want to sort this data. So I prioritize mostly about the service, post hoc about the given data or the data you're having at that given point of time. So there are primarily two types of segmentation techniques. Descriptive. So basically, we are trying to find the similarities and the differences between customer groups, and predictive. So we are trying to predict changes in technically independent variables and how they will affect the dependent variables. Not trying to stay too much or be focused on the theory, but one second. Question: are there validated methods for associating post-hoc data with segments or shortcuts to make guesses about the customers when you only have limited data about them? Well, honestly, I always keep saying that there are no shortcuts, but there are always shortcuts when you start working with the data. And I will get back to your question later on, but thank you. So if we talk about segment types and techniques, overall, there are 4 main types we can work with. So if you're talking about survey data, it would be either cross-tabulation or regression methods. So I believe some of you may build some regression models before, either as a part of your courses taken at Kyiv School of Economics, or maybe it's some other universities. But regression is, frankly speaking, very useful. Cross-tabulation, it's basically the old data stored in the categories, and then you're trying to see and to identify any recurring patterns based on the actual data. Clustering, it is something that we guys gonna be doing today. So the type of segmentation which pretty much done automatically based on the averages or the partitioning K-means method. So that's a part of our course directly. And then the conjoint analysis. So you're trying to split data in bins in order to understand which attributes affect the most of the decision. So basically, you have the number of attributes listed here in a tabular form, and then you will try to understand whether the price here is affecting the choice of the customer between, for example, option 1 and option 2. But again, for the sake of this course, we will be covering clustering analysis only. So if you guys have any questions about 3 other methods, I can provide you some information so you can study on your own. Because most of the time, clustering, and back kind of to your question, it is something that we probably will work the most in our day-to-day life, or at least in my experience, it was clustering that it was probably the most common one. So one second. Basically, across all these 4 methods, we are trying to, as a marketing analyst, try to assess and try to test different methods for each of category or for each question we are having. So for example, if you're working with the post hoc data, so we will try clustering, but also we will try to put the conjoint analysis in order to understand which analysis will provide us with better accuracy, with better predictive ability, so to say, so we can come up with some sort of meaningful recommendations, and we will get to it. And the same about the descriptive and the regression. It looks like that the old data is fixed, so we cannot jump from, for example, descriptive a priori to the conjoint analysis, but it all comes to what the data you captured in this point and what the data you having here. And if you are able to ask, for example, on your survey responders, that if you have, for example, brand as TVC and brand as Yanso as two possible options, and then providing the full specification, asking them which option or which product they will choose over another, that can also provide you some flexibility in order which analysis you can run here based on the data you will be having. Okay, can I see another comment? I was thinking of the example of iPhones versus Android for income level. Some rule of thumb. Oh, we will get to that part, so don't worry about it. So let's go to another slides. So basically, each of these analyses, they have some consideration or some watch out. So for the clustering, it would be the sum of squared error that we will be primarily working with. For the regression, it would be R squared. So basically the understanding of how well our model fits to predictable value, and what's the difference between predictable and independent variable. So there are some benchmarks I've seen many times we were referring to, because in marketing it's mostly something between 0.6 and 0.9 coefficient. Perfect relationship, it's probably something that don't exist at all unless your data is highly correlated. But everything else in marketing wise, it should be somewhere between this range. Sometimes slightly off, but you always can think on how you can improve your data. So don't worry about statistics here. It's very straightforward at this point. So let's get to the next example. So far, so good. Any questions on that? Okay, cool. So basically, for the basic customer segmentation methods, we can start thinking about some the ways on how we can put the data. So first of all, if we are talking about like primarily 4 categories, which are the most obvious ones, it can be demographic, decision-making status, customer history with the company, and personal interactions with the customer. So we can think of, for example, how much data, demographical data we have at this point. So I'm talking about location, age, gender, life stage, and marital status. This is useful, and this is probably the data we are usually will be capturing. So we will be having immediately, because when the person submits his or her order information, it's usually about location, gender, marital status, occasionally. But location and gender is probably something you will have like immediately. Then decision-making status, especially useful for B2B companies. So title not necessarily tells about person's responsibilities. So sometimes it may create the confusion on how we will be targeting people, especially if you're running LinkedIn ads. So it is important to know what is the person responsible for, what his or her actual job responsibilities. So for example, if you're working is a software industry, B2B primarily, and you're targeting back to the example of the accounting or book company who fill the taxes, you need to know that the person may be running the business, but she's not the person who is in charge of making some financial decisions, or whether they are interested in acquiring your product or not. So just something to consider. Not always the manager of the, for example, of the division has enough authority to sign up the partnership. Just something to consider. Customer history with company. Basically, anything related to the previous transactions, understanding the loyalty, or at least the people who value the loyalty or the value your interaction as a company with them and your customers. Personal interactions with customers. It's basically when I was talking about handling tickets and having account manager who can have some sort of like a private or at least personalized relationship with the client. So these groups would be the perfect test segments to start your experiments, because first of all, you will know and you will have the access to them asking the questions like what has changed recently, or you can offer them actually to participate in your test, or to ask them to submit or to fill in the survey. Because if you, for example, working back to the example of the retail company, it is sometimes really hard to convince people to take a survey when they are exiting the store. So in order to do it effectively, you either need to ask them or ask them to arrange appointment or offer them some incentives. So for example, like a discount card, so you can take the time and have a meaningful conversation about the product offerings. So basically we can go to our mini exercise. So it would be like the presentation. So to say, 1 second, try to minimize this. So if you guys go to the Moodle, in class materials mandatory. So I have, 1 second. Yeah, I uploaded the cluster analysis template with results file. It's very simple, but at the same time, it's a very straightforward representation of how you can run cluster analysis first, like the initial segmentation, and then translate it into actual market segments. So 1 second, drag into the screen. So basically here, you are able to fill in all your information you're interested in. But this information should be encoded somehow. So if we are talking about income labels, so it would be like the nominal versus ordinal data. So you need to encode everything that, for example, people with the income of, let's say, between $20,000 and $30,000 annually, you need to encode and to assign a code on a scale from 1 to 10. It's the best way to do for this particular analysis. And then once you encode that information, you can fill it in and just run the analysis in order to evaluate those. I see some questions, 1 second. If there are some data about the difference between customers that take surveys and the customers that don't. Well, that means that, first of all, you need to understand that there are some survey methodologies need to be met. Plus, it all comes to the how representative a sample is, or how representative is your data. Because if you're, for example, interviewing, let's say 10 or 100 people, but they all kind of live in the same neighborhood and they're not actually random, so the income levels and everything else is the same, that means that your sample is not representative to the population of possible customers can be achieved for your particular market or the type of the business. And the same works on the records in your CRM database. Those, I would say, probably more reliable because people tend to lie a lot about themselves while taking surveys. But at the same time, it all comes whether you can break that data into segments or not. So we'll get to that point later on. So the only limitation this template is having is basically you cannot use some variables, binary variables like gender, male 1, female 2, because it will take the averages of those, as well as if you're interested in difference between iPhone owners versus Android owners, this template wouldn't help you as well. But what you can do as a workaround, just split your data. So you will have all the data with people who are iPhone users in one spreadsheet or in one file, and another data will be for Android users, and then you can analyze it. Because the way the key clustering works, it takes the averages of your responses, and then it runs the analysis trying to plot all the averages into the maps or the bubbles, the categorical bubbles, so you can see and to define the segments. And I will show you in a second. I can see some other questions. I was thinking about personality. That's normal. You won't be able, sorry. Kenneth's question, I was thinking by personality. Some people just never take service. Yes, that's totally fine. But I mean, you need to work with whatever you have at the point of time. Plus, you need to think how to encourage those people to take service. And again, if it's like a very low percentage of the people, it's not a big deal. Because according to the information I read, and you can look it up in the web, there is a very tiny percent of people who never take service naturally, from 3 to 5%. So it's not a big loss because, again, unless you're advertising your product for that particular group of people, which I don't think it's really a case. It's more about just like, as you mentioned, personality. So that percentage shouldn't be really affecting anything related. So first of all, do you guys able to access this template? Just thumb up or plus sign so I can see it. Okay, sweet. So basically what you can do, and again, it is something that you guys do for your companies or for your day-to-day work. If you have the data and this data was collected and can be put on the nominal scale from 1 to 10, or sort of be encoded, you can add extra columns here as well as the extra data. So this template supports up to 100 records for your responders. The only thing it doesn't support, or something you need to do on your own, or work on representativeness of your sample. But we will talk briefly about that later on when we start talking about the testing strategies, because sampling will be a part of there. So bear with me. So overall, the assumption is that you have collected responses of your people. So for example, let's say I'm interested in, or interviewed people, collected the survey data about the willingness to switch, importance of the price, importance of the brand, and frequency of shopping. And I'm interested in running cluster analysis to see how those people will be categorized, or how those people will be segmented. So basically you can click run the cluster analysis. It might take like up to 1 minute or 2, but already done this. So this output and everything else work for us. So first thing first, you will get the breakdown of the results with a result for the standard squared error per segment. And here we are looking for the value for the lowest possible value. So here in this case, it will be it will be the value for 5 segments. But then some things to check. Segmentation map, we can see, and we want always to have our segment to be as much representative as possible, because if one of our segments have 60% of all our responders in it, so that means that it's very generic. So we won't be able to probably break it and work with that segment effectively. So if you scroll all the way to the segment 5, we actually having like a very smaller size of our segments, but it's probably because we're working with 10 people only. So it would be interesting exercise, which you guys can do on your own, to play around, add some dummy variables here, again, on a scale from 1 to 10, and just to run analysis again, just to see how the responses will change. But then it's a second check. Third check, it would be checking, 1 second, scrolling up, checking the actual SSE charts, because we're interested where the standard square error is the lowest, or the deviation is the lowest across several segments. So for example, remember when I was saying 2 segments probably overfeeding the data, and it's all kind of like misattributed to the segment 2, because you can see that the sum of the error, so the error here means your value, or the value of your particular observation or the responder to the average value per segment. So this difference, and it's squared, it's a very significant, it's a very large. So we want to have the lowest errors if possible. So the segment 5, as I mentioned before, based on the output of the analysis, first of all, the sum of all errors per segment is low. So it's 32.3 only. And then looking at the pattern overall, If there is like peaking or actually not peaking and it's flat, it's probably the lowest. So we want to stick with the 5 segments. And basically, if we want to talk and to start describing our segments, we have a lot of data available at this point already. So such data as, oh, 1 second. Yeah, first of all, the number of responders and where they are allocated segment-wise based on their responses and everything else. And secondly, if we are talking about the actual segment description, the segment description will be available here. So if you encode it, let's say willingness to switch from where the 10 is the maximum and 1 is the lowest. So you can use like the normal distribution, statistical distribution bell curve, just to say that, for example, from 1 to 2, no loyal or completely willing to switch. But remember, just don't type everything here. I'm just for the sake of the demonstration. Then 3 to 4, somehow willing. 5 and 6, pretty much neutral. 6 to 7, somehow loyal. And for example, 8 to 10, high loyalty. So this is something you can start with when you will be or interpreting results, or when someone in your company will be working on crafting and designing these surveys and encoding those results. The result encodement can be done either by yourself or by someone who is comfortable working with data. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the numbers. It's all about what comes before the numbers, what actually your number resemble. So these kind of things should be followed tediously and very carefully when you're working with the methodology. Because remember, garbage in and garbage out. If you're not explaining on, let's say, during the survey data collection process, that, for example, can you say what is your, for example, type, or how much are you willing to switch to the new brand, and you don't provide the legend so that people can refer to it and say something like, on the scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, people may be confused. So try to provide them some details, some help, and there are like a lot of information on how to do it effectively in the internet, but unfortunately it's just not the part of our scope. So the interpretation of the results is available, basically the overall results of the segmentation are available here. The spreadsheet called, a tab called output clusters. But the output right now is just the segments. They're not marketing segments yet. They would become marketing segments once you start describing the data. So for example, let's assume that willingness to switch 10 is the highest, so the person is completely willing to switch, and 1 is the lowest. So we will be saying or characterizing the segments as 1 being the lowest for all of those 4 and 10 being the highest. So segment 1 is unlikely or really unwilling to switch for another brand, having the average importance of the price tag, importance of our brand or of the brand overall is not really important for this segment, and this person has, or this segment has, lower than the average frequency of shopping. So once you collect all this information, plus you understand how many people fall in this bucket, you will get the actual market segment. And if you did an outstanding, terrific job working with, first of all, your buyer's personas, you will be able to attribute it, or you will be able to cross-verify the findings from this segmentation output and compare it to your buyer personas. So at that time, you will be able to attribute who is who, if it's possible, and if it's not, you will be able to reassess either the way you were capturing data or your buyer's personas. And this is, again, this is something constant. It's something ongoing you need to do. But the way you will be re-evaluating your data, you should get like the approximate idea of these people based on your interaction, as well as try talking to the different departments, explaining this data and to see what kind of the output they are having. Because if you see that across your company, especially like salespeople and the customer representatives, they saying that no, it cannot be right, that means that there might be some issues in terms of the data collection. But in other case, if, for example, you collected all this data, you run this analysis, you show your market segment findings to your departments, and they say, yes, that's actually the very accurate representation, but your personas or ideas, assumptions about personas are incorrect. So that means that you're probably not that close to the personas, and probably some things needed to be changed because the assumption of your business were built on slightly different people. And it's either went sideways at some point, so you got, or you made some sort of adjustments to your product, which now falls into or looks appealing and attractive to different group of people. Or over the time, you just change the target audience. And in your mind or on the paper, it looks that the target audience hadn't changed at all. But in fact, it is different from now. Any questions on this for now, or are we good? Okay, sweet. Thank you. So also, there are some useful links you guys may want to explore on your own. So if you click on the cluster analysis for marketing link, so there is a website which is particularly dedicated, open source, available for everyone who's learning. That's why I really like it, because it's one of the best possible ways to explain the clustering method for the audience. So there are some interesting links and some interesting parts I can take you through briefly, so you can explore it on your own. Again, it's not mandatory, in case only if you're interested. 1 second, it's opening up. So the interpretation, the video on how to use this template and to interpret the result, everything else is provided here. Overall, if you're interested in seeing how the actual segmentation, market segmentation result will look like, or the actual naming, it is available here. One moment. Yeah, this link. As well as a walkthrough on the methodology on how this template built, and basically all the explanations are available here. By the end of the video, I believe it's the last 2 or 3 minutes. So it may help you just to interpret the data, so you can play around on your own. And overall, again, explanations are also written here. So this summary, as it is provided here, that is the actual market segment descriptions we all trying to find. And then once we are able to pinpoint this data and attribute this data to the buyer's personas, we can speak about the actual product improvements, because we will get both qualitative and quantitative data and the representation of all your customers. So then we can work from there in order to improve overall customers' experience in that front, whether it is the introduction or the main website redesign change, video ad change, the change in terms of we're using other messaging, in terms of, for example, the specifications, interactions, number of channels we're using to reach out to that person, and yada, 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 yada. So you're only limited by your imagination, as well as the things or the level of digital marketing transformation your company is in it. So go back, refer to the slide number 1, just to understanding where you are in terms of your KPIs, the state of things for your particular company, then understand the kind of the data you can work at this point. And basically match up to your template, to your persona and to think, okay, if my data obtained from the analysis matches to the personas, I also made some sort of like a triangulation. I tried to cross or to challenge my data, and everything points out clearly that I have the issues communicating to my clients at the initial stages because they don't understand how they can customize the offer. It's the issue with an offer. Because again, why I talk often about triangulation or having three different ways to approach the problem is basically making sure that we are not blindsided. So the survivorship bias is not existing while we are making the decision of doing something. So for example, we want to bring book an appointment form, but we are not quite sure that it is something that we really need to do right now, whether it's affecting our performance or not, because we have a very stable flow of our clients calling us because they need to talk over through many things and it's just easier. So how we can do it? Well, start simple, because it all resources, it all money, and you may need to have significant help or significant resource support from development side, website developers, which you may not be having at this point. So you need to reassess whether it is valuable, important for you first, in order to make a financial or any sort of decision afterwards. So you will talk to the people, to the actual customers. You will talk to the departments. You will maybe survey the people, the actual customers, and the prospect, understanding whether it's important for them, then understanding that, okay, it's really important, that probably may bring you this value in the future. It will be your ROI. So you can measure that, okay, I need 2 weeks to design this form, implement it in my CRM system, spend, for example, $1,000 on developers, configure my email flows, configure my communications, configure attribution of that form and the data pools from that form into my CRM database system to merge it all with invoicing. And that would take me like 1 week or 2 weeks. It would cost me $3,000, but the potential output I'm expecting, the lift in number of book an appointment, and for 30% of the people, according to my survey, it is the biggest challenge to book an appointment or to decide whether they want to proceed with this firm or not. And from now, you're transforming all the and quantitative into financial decision, which will have the impact on the marketing, how you communicate with the people, both in the state of the lead, as well as to sending them reminders and analyzing your attribution of the conversion efforts on every given state. So it's not the problem or the challenge on the marketing side, it's also on the financial side and on the product side. That's why I was saying that, yes, it may look, it's like not the marketing issue, but it's a graduate school. So it is the complex thing. And if the complex thing is well communicated, analyzed, the framework in place, you can analyze it from the marketing standpoint for sure and primarily, but you would need inputs from other parts of your business. Does it make sense, guys? Cool. Okay. So how many of you have done any clustering or segmentation analysis before? Are there any people? Candace, I see. Okay, good. Okay, see some responses. Okay, sweet. So what we're gonna do, guys, do you have any data available, for example, on your day-to-day work, or just some dummy data to try in and just try this form out? So you can challenge your personas and therefore offer some recommendations, or you don't have it and you are comfortable working with dummy data. or basically on whatever the data you feel is accurate representation of your persona and the customer journey mapping. Dummy data, I have data. Okay, cool. So let's do next thing. Because we still have some time, I'm gonna cover the testing part and the sampling part. Then we will talk briefly about marketing analytics skill set and everything else. And then we will return to this example. We will start filling these numbers and working with you on defining and describing the segments. So you will have only one homework for tomorrow, sending me customer journey map, your customer journey maps. And for the next week, or sorry, for tomorrow, by the end of the day tomorrow, you'll send me your segmentation analysis results or the outputs, which we will work tomorrow on. The same in class exercise. So you will start working on the skeleton, you will be able to accomplish, and then you will have a short assignment up to 2 hours of your time, whether you will be practicing regression, a bit of clustering analysis, as well the description of the market segment descriptions on your own as a part of the assignment. So you will have the experience as of tomorrow. Finishing, I will provide the feedback, and then you will incorporate the feedback and everything we discussed in the assignment. Make sense? Okay, cool. So let's stick with that plan for now. So let me talk about audio is sloppy. Can you write the assignments? So I don't know if me anything. Yeah, I will re-elaborate it, Candice, later on. But essentially, what I'm saying that by the end of the day today, or before our lectures tomorrow, you guys will need to send the final version of your customer journey maps so I can review. Then tomorrow during our classes, we will cover the segmentation in detail, the description of the market segments, similar to what I just showed you. And then you will send me, and we will be working with the dummy data. So after our lectures tomorrow, you will have the skeleton, similarly to what you guys are having with the customer journey maps. And basically probably like before the end of the day on Monday, you will send me your market segments descriptions. I will provide you the feedback, and then you guys can start working on the assignment, which is already available on in Moodle, but I haven't created like the criteria and the evaluation, but it's very straightforward. Again, I will mention it later on. So if it's everything clear so far, that's cool. But don't worry, we will first of all reevaluate, rearrange, and talk about some things again. Personas, yes, tonight, if possible. I'm just talking about journey maps, but if you guys can send personas, feel free to do it. So overall, if we are talking about the implementation or insights we obtained from the segmentation analysis, that's cool, but we need to improve our products. We need to continue implementing the change, continue providing better user or customer experience. And how we can do? Well, before implementing the change, we need to be 100% confident that that change is something our customer really needs to, and how that change can be implemented. Because if we are talking about the form deployment, some form may be sloppy, some form may not be well arranged or asking the right questions, or people are not comfortable working with those schemes. Oh, sorry, forms, because we may be asking like a personal information which is really sensitive. So we need to have several tests or several different forms in that matter to test our particular segment behavior, if it's applicable. And then once we obtained all that knowledge, we can implement the actual, like the full scale changes. So instead of having and working with the mockup version, we will be working with the full-scale solution. And of course, it works with pretty much not only with the website or any sort of like a visual experience, but it works in advertising as well. If we are testing some sort of like a messaging or some sort of like a images, messaging, when I'm talking about messaging, I mean, for example, not only the video format or the video duration, but the main focus of your message. For example, the pop-up window or the main message is mentioned during the first 25 seconds of your video, and the total length is 1 minute. But then you decided to change some things because you think that the people already prepared to understand your story, and then you moved the main messaging of your video from 25 seconds to 20 seconds. Would you see some conversion rates here? And would it be better for all your messaging from that point and on be updated from 25% threshold or 25 second mark to 20-second mark? That is something we need to think of, because about it will affect all our advertising budgets in terms of how much money we spend to reach the particular group of the people, because there is a certain percentage of people who is watching only first 10 seconds, and then basically it all falling out. So the people, fewer and fewer people watching video completely till the end. But before doing that, we first of all need to understand what kind of testing we can do. We can come up with basic analytics or basic simple measurements, which we are likely to optimize. Is like, yeah, it's good to know that, for example, we were having some ideas about what our, let's say, mobile users are looking or checking our website versus the desktop users, but it doesn't tell us anything on how we can improve things. So then there are several other things to consider. Some things like A and B testing or multivariate testing. So A and B testing is just a comparison of two factors at the same time. So you have the picture, but for example, on the picture, you have two different fonts. Here, all your fonts are in bold or boldface, and another one is just plain. So no coloring, nothing, no formatting applied at all. So you're comparing one characteristic. That would be A and B test. Version 1 contains this kind of text formatting. Version 2 has one parameter different. And what we are trying to assess whether texts involved have the higher conversion rate than text in plain, like unformatted text. That's our first hypothesis. But when we are testing or using multivariate testing, we are testing the combinations of several effects. And the only limitation we are having here, it is requiring a significant amount either of traffic or conversions. Majority for A and B testing and multivariate testing in marketing nowadays, it's all done in a digital world, in digital marketing. So when we're talking about the testing, we need to make sure that we have enough traction or the website visits or anything else, or impressions, if you're talking about the paid media or organic media, to test our assumptions. Okay, I see some questions. I have seen references to sufficient traffic before, but not what kind of numbers could count as sufficient. How many is enough? We will get to that. Good question. So first of all, basically, let's start talking about overall what is testing. So our goal is not basically to understand the behavior of the people. We want to expand our learnings to the population, because we are able to test only a small sample of people. Actual representation, very, very tiny bit, maybe 1 to 10%. But if you're talking about like the massive scale, for example, we are able to reach to, let's say, 1,000 people via Facebook ads, but overall our audience on Facebook, for example, for Ukraine, maybe like, I don't know, let's put it like 5 million people. So we need to make a well-represented assumption first of all, and then conclusion based on the sample characteristics. And talking of sample characteristic and the sample representativeness, we are talking about the sample size and how much data I need to take in order to make sure that my sample is representing the entire properties of the entire population. And here it all comes to the statistics. So at the same time, from now on, I will be going through the framework like a methodology and trying to explain it in a very plain English, the statistical concepts. So you guys can pick it up and work on your own if you need, of course. So if you're talking about the framework for the formal test, we always try to have the equal audience split. And it's all done as a part of framework without actually calculating the sample size yet. So we need to have the design in advance answers, controlled variables, or things we wanted to test. Audience should be split per version or per test object, object 1, object 2, or test 1, test 2. And results should be applicable to the entire population, or sample has to be representative of the entire population. So observation studies, in a contrast to formal tests, it's not something like we actually can control. So remember when I was saying that all our policies and everything we design based on the past data can be obsolete on the next day. It's all about the observational studies, because if you look at the past without actually controlling the or understanding the current trend, the data may be obsolete on the next day. So going back to the test statistics, population sizes, and everything else. So again, guys, some concepts may not make sense to you, and unfortunately it's not the part of this course to cover statistics and everything in detail, but I will try to provide you as many explanations as I can, the part of it. And if you have some questions, start Googling, because basically there are like a lot of materials, and I'm more than happy to provide you some links if you want to check on your own. But anyhow, so we are all looking about statistical significance that will tell us the difference in conversion rate between the test versions is real or not. So we use the hypothesis. So if you were running some sort of like test or analyzing a test before, the simplest one, student test, t-test, we are all interested in the confidence level. So for example, we are getting the response that 90% of cases, we are seeing the noticeable difference between version 1 and version 2. So we are assuming that this only 5% of cases where the difference can be minor or not visible at all. Why 95% is just the industry benchmark. So that's why we always stick with this one, or you may hear the confidence level of 95, 90, or 90%, but mostly it would be 95. 90% here and 99, it is something that we can adjust manually, and I will show you how literally in 2 minutes. So the calculation of the test statistics, the score, and all other relevant values, it's all done via statistical modeling or statistical analysis. So if you're not, again, familiar with that, don't worry. It's all from statistics. So essentially what we're trying to understand that basically our p-value and our z-value meet all our requirements. Essentially, if the p-value, so for example, we are assuming that there is no difference between test A and test B. We are analyzing results and calculating our test statistics. And then we are concluding that the p-value, or basically the chance of detecting a difference where is none, is lower than the other alpha. Alpha in this case, it would be basically the value of which we obtain from the confidence levels and from the test statistics, will be p-value that lower than alpha, then we have to reject the null hypothesis. That means that there is a difference. But if p-value is greater than alpha, essentially saying that in 5% cases, which we are not expecting to see any difference, there is more than 5% difference. So our confidence level of 95% is no longer valid. We fail to basically reject, or we have to accept null hypothesis. So we cannot longer assume that there is a difference between test A and test B. So far so good, or it's kind of piecing all together? Thumb up. Okay. Yeah, because for me, sorry guys, it's, if you're not really familiar, it's a bit hard to understand, or to explain it to you, but I hope I'm trying my best at least to show it how to do it. So Kenneth, back to your question. So it's all if about we are talking about sorry, if we are talking about the population size and everything population related, we need to understand what kind of analysis or what kind of hypothesis we are testing. So for example, in digital media, because again, it all comes to the statistic, we need to understand what actually we are evaluating. So we need, first of all, to calculate the values and to understand what kind of test we are having, whether it's a left-tailed, right-tailed, or two-tailed test. For majority of the cases, it would be two-tailed case with the normal distribution. So our numbers, we will be seeing significant difference if we are testing option or test A versus test B, that people are interacting positively and interacting negatively. And it would be significant on the both ends of the tail, because if you're considering the tail, think about this distribution as something like in the middle, we having the benchmark, for example, to our engagement rate of 3%. And then we are seeing that some people interact very well. So we are seeing the increase of, let's say, from 3% at the benchmark for this versus from the test A to 5% in the test B. But at the same time, some people just hate cursive. So we are seeing the lower percentage, like basically the drop from 3% for the test A to 1% to the test B. Make sense? Following? Hope you guys are sleeping. So it is two-tailed. So we are taking into consideration negative impact and positive impact. So when we're talking about the calculation of the sample size or how much data we need, there are like a lot of statistical formulas embedded into this template. But essentially, I'm saying something like, okay, I'm interested in seeing and testing the engagement rate between two different creatives, creative 1 and creative B. And I'm interested that for creative B, I'm expecting to see at least 20% increase from the engagement rate of 3% on the both sides, either positive or negative or just a positive. So if it's just positive, we go with a one-tail test, statistical formula. If it's both positive and negative, it's a two-tail test. And then I'm the one who is defining what's my confidence level or what's the power of the test. So I just put like 95%, classical or classic benchmark from the student test or t-test. So then, as you can see, this is a basically embedded statistical formula on how much responses we require for the two-tail test. And for the two-tail test, negative and positive, the difference can be both positive and negative. We require higher sample size. So if you guys can see it here, it's all embedded in the formula. So considering this formula, we're just saying that, again, it's too long and the interpretation is a bit tedious, that because it's two-tail test, we're taking two number as 2 degrees of freedom, multiplying it by the number of our power of the test, as well as trying to normalize the value of the confidence test. And then we are bringing everything to the calculation of the number of responses we require to hit or to make sure that, for example, we require 691 responses at 5% engagement rate to prove that there is no difference on, to prove that there is a difference in both positive and negative ends, which will be a case in 95% of all cases. That's called statistical significance in this case, because we are operating with PZ scores as well as the representation of our sample. So far, so good. Again, it's all about formulas. Plus, some businesses may have the different ways of approaching testing. I'm just testing or providing you the example on my screen as it works in the digital industry. So there are certain ways or certain benchmarks or certain things you can insert, I cannot insert. But for the sake of this exercise, let's solely focus on the digital work and the digital examples related to A and B testing. Okay, how are we doing in terms of timing? 1 second. Okay, so guys, let's have a 10-minute break, and then we can probably spend another 10 minutes on this topic, maybe even 20, and then we will transition to the essential analytical skill set for the marketing analytics. Cool? Kenneth, I will respond to your question right after the break. Cool? Thank you, sir. So back at 17:34 your time, if I'm not mistaken at the timing. All right, guys, back to work. Is everyone back at their desks? All right, sweet, thank you. So let's continue on then. So basically, 1 second, Kenneth, back to your question. So any responses here referring to the sales conversions? So 1 second. Well, you can, it depends on how you encode this. So for example, let's think that this is engagement rate of 3%. The conversion rate in digital marketing, let's put it, would be 1.5%. So see how the two-tailed test and one-tailed test will change the values. Almost doubled, and probably we will need to adjust the lift percentage test threshold, probably, let's say like 35%, maybe, not 35. 35 is higher. So no, probably like still no. Previous value will be fine. So essentially, it depends on what is your benchmark for the particular response rate, which can be conversion rate. So the people getting converted. So the people clicking on your ad and landing on your website, as well as the people interacting with your ad somehow. So the responses here, if we're talking about the conversion rate, would be the actual conversion, maybe sales, maybe sign up for something, or if it's like click-through rate analysis. So number of clicks. If it's the engagement type you're interested in, it would be the number of engagements and everything else. What is the lift percentage threshold? So basically, the difference you are expecting to see between the test A and test B to conclude that there is a significant difference. So for example, click-through rate of 2% and then click-through rate of 2.7%, because you may assume that, okay, the 0.3%, it's just the variance. It's not the proof that the test B works better than test A. It depends on your industry and what you're trying to analyze. Basically, I would say it's the industry knowledge. So if you're in your industry in digital advertising, the click-through rate is 3%, and you're expecting to see improvement up to 3.5%, then you're specifying that the lift percentage threshold will be the difference between 3.5 and 3%. So again, up to your industry and up to your type of the product and type of advertising efforts. If we are talking about the advertising, if it's like organic, so some sort of like a scheduled post, those metrics will be different, because sometimes it's hard to squeeze juice from the organic efforts. It's all about the topics. So it would be slightly different comparison. This example, it's all about digital in a sense of either advertising or organic, but we are talking about two different images, two different assets we are comparing. Are we good on that example? Okay, thank you. So basically, if we are putting everything in the numerical perspective, so we are analyzing conversion rate. So responses here would be the number of conversions you're expecting to see. So if we are talking about digital advertising, here we are talking about the actual conversion. So the volume of the impressions, that would be the indicator you're interested in. So how many times people saw your ad, and or at least how many impressions or how many times people need to see your ad, so you can achieve this number of conversions in order to prove that your hypothesis is legit or valid. So that's the way it will work. So here we are talking about the conversion rate for version A, and our analysis, it's all about boldface or fonts in bold highlighted. So no difference between A and B, and there is a difference. So the fonts within version B work better than fonts in the version A, or overall better. So we put the hypothesis perspective. We are testing two different assets, or just like the cursive or the sets of assets. So we may take one image with a $40 offer and another with $50. Test one, these two in bold, and test B in bold, test A, just a plain or no formatting applied at all. So according to the test, based on the table or the spreadsheet I just was showing you, we calculated the minimum sample size of the impressions, which is converted into conversions. And then we identified what is the expected test statistics we need to achieve for version B and for version A. We put our hypothesis, align the p-value, and it says that we have to reject null hypothesis. That means there is a sufficient evidence that the bold fonts for the version B will increase our conversion rates. Therefore, the implication of this finding or this hypothesis is saying that we need to switch to creatives or assets boldface similar to the version B over version A. And if we want to plan things for the future, of course, if we have some time before the campaign deployment, we start the test. I will include it, Saman, so your comment. So we need to make sure that before the full campaign, we can run a learning mode, or we have 2 weeks of learning period. It's a normal practice in advertising agencies to assign the task or to leave all the campaigns according to the methodology I was explaining about for the last probably 30 minutes, to be running on its own for 2 weeks, not touching it, and then working with the initial numbers. So as just the continuation on, if we are talking about the click-through rates, how many impressions we need, and if we are talking for example, for different types of the content, as well as the proportions of our numbers or the number of the converters, if it's larger or smaller. So that will impact our numbers as well. For example, 3.7 thousand impressions here, and if we're comparing the conversion rates for small size of images, it will require way more impressions. So we need to stay under the same assumptions and under the same conditions when we are testing. So we can test only one setting or only one feature at the time, not two. Because if we take version A in one size, but unformatted, and version for test B formatted and a smaller size, that's a problem because it's not A to B, not A and B test anymore. Why some people may wonder we are not running multivariate testing? Yeah, we can run similarly to the spreadsheet, to the methodology I took you through, but it requires sufficient traffic and conversions, which sometimes is not achievable. Plus, it may also create some issues in methodologies. So again, depending on your industry and everything else, A and B test is, I would say 99% is fully deployable. Multivariate testing, if you have well-written data governance policies, your data is clean and well-crafted, well-designed, then you can do it. I also put some test design guidelines here, so you guys can see what is the right difference or not the right difference, or how to do better, etc., etc. But essentially just saying how to put the right emphasis and what you can do and what you can. In this example, they all look similar initially, but in fact they are different. The difference is the description. Get the iPhone 11 on us, and then for 700% off, and iPhone 11 for $0. Framing, remember that bias. Technically it's the same used in the version A and the version C, but it will change. It will make the impact and make the difference. Same here. People will notice small changes, so you need to emphasize the difference in colors and fonts, because originally here, okay, it's easier to catch, but by now and learn more, honestly, I would be more focused on the central messaging written here rather than here. Again, the only one difference we're testing right now, it's basically, you see that these pictures, because then it would be like a different test, as well as just the overall positioning, what we are having or where we are having the offer written, here or here. That's one condition. But if there are any other changes in terms of the position, the person position, the body position, etc., that will affect the test as well. So back to that example with the video, you need to make sure that the creative format, again, I'm talking about digital advertising and organic or digital marketing. So creative formats should align always with the goal of the task. So we need to run the tasks which are static. That's why you cannot really move the messaging or change your video a lot, except there is some sort of like a pop-up banner or some pop-up window or something similar to it. So you can control it, because if you change the video even like 2 or 3 seconds, it will provide a very different experience. As well as you always need to understand and to have like a basic thing in the consideration, because before we were talking about static images, but when we are talking about the video, as you can see, only 5% of the people hit or watch video up to 25%. So if our video is, for example, like 1 minute, only 5% of the people will reach the 15% mark or 15-second mark. So something we need to keep in mind. Overall, just the full test design guidelines. So you can basically take it through, navigate it. And as I remember, some people wanted to communicate effectively with their marketing managers, backing them up as a data analyst. So this test design guideline should provide you a bit of direction. And if you're talking about the process flow, so this is pretty much the process flow we need to follow. So brief, again, some wording may be, you may not be familiar with, but brief is just like the overall idea, what you're trying to pitch or what you're trying to understand. And then stakeholders, all the interested party, people who have influence over testing design, over imagery, management, or whatever the person is or are, people are, who may impact the decision or the format of your test design. And then it kind of like breaks into two separate parts, whether we pivot to observational study because we don't have insufficient impression volumes or budgets. Again, like multivariate testing. We read article or we found a statistic report that it's best in the industry practices to do this or to use this kind of formatting rather that kind of formatting because many companies are doing this. And you don't have advertising budgets or any testing budgets right now, so you can validate that approach. So you just inform the testing team or people in charge for testing about those changes and how we want to incorporate. And then you just decide how you will apply this difference or how you will frame the test, what kind of KPI and the established benchmark you're expecting to achieve, etc., etc. So again, very industry and business specific, but the framework pretty much works well. And if you decide to proceed with the formal test, so monitoring the performance, synchronizing with the strategy or with the stakeholders who were responsible for the strategy behind the testing methodology. And then if you have like a weekly reporting calls or the optimization, could be. I mean, it's basically for the user experience based sake. So ad companies or the companies who do some sort of like a testing experience based on the organic reach. So you can basically refer to ad company as well in this case. Any other questions in the meantime? Clients can be, well, if you're working in the agency setting, so that would be division managers or someone who has the influence, like the stakeholder, on the advertising budgets and the advertising efforts. If you, basically, you are the owner of the business and this methodology is used within your business, so then reporting calls or stand-ups meeting or just check-ins or some sort of like meetings where you can sit down, talk through and just discuss the ideas. So I call them like check-ins or weekly reporting calls. Again, industry or whatever type of business you are working in or with. So far, so good? Okay, assuming yes. Cool. So, how much time we have? Okay, we are approximately 1 hour left, so let's do it next. So I see, guys, you're more into doing things, testing things, asking questions. So let's don't spend too much time on topic 6, and then we will have a bit more time working with, first of all, segmentation, working with customer journey mapping and buyer personas today. So then you will be able to accomplish more things and ask more questions. Does it work for you, or you want to progress at just a normal pace? Because I believe it's just more like a theoretical slash theory overall, which I believe it's not really relevant in such case if you want to practice more. Okay, thank you. So then basically just a brief introduction or the explanation. So just to understand why marketing analytics is different from data science, or marketing analyst is different from data analyst or data science. So overall, if we're talking about, 1 second, I believe I can switch it to different mode. So if you're talking about marketing analyst, it's all which is relevant to marketing experience and everything related to the reporting. Yes, there is an overlap in terms of the way we communicate the data and the way we craft the story from the data. But data scientist is more about data product. So basically assistance to the marketing analyst to extract and to aggregate and to use data better. So data science or data analyst, it's about data reporting and data products. For the marketing analyst, it's a solving marketing related issue using data. So that's a big difference between those. And you may see that a lot of like a job descriptions or a lot of materials written for marketing analysts, but in the end of the day, it's all about data analysts who work on figuring out marketing problems. So that's why the scope of work is narrow, but within that scope of work, you have so many different alternatives. Because at the same time, we have different industries, we have different sets of benchmarks, we have different priorities as well as different strategies. So from the data science standpoint, they would be probably like not the broader, but probably more narrow scope of data science techniques used in marketing analytics, but the optional and overall the number of case studies available under marketing analytics stream of the data science will be way broader, because there are so many different variations, there are so many impacts and many things that you cannot predict or have very little influence over on. Plus, marketing and the way that population is progressing, it's very fast. So you may jump into reaction marketing, but at the end of the day, the place you want to be is a strategic marketing. So you may start working on the reaction marketing problem. So there is some sort of hype on, jump on, create some sort of like framing or some VT content around that. But 2 days later on, it's relevant because someone said something about that. All people start judging people who were just making jokes about it yesterday. That's a situation about the coronavirus is a good example. So a few days ago, we may see that all people are sympathetic to, for example, like the general, like the cause that the people collecting money. But for example, the government all of a sudden, or there is some sort of investigation on how government was ineffectively spending money, and then all these policies, all this branding or crowd sourcing or anything like charity related ideas will be put in the vain because no one wants to donate any money overall. So reaction versus strategic, always something to keep in mind. So some of you may saw this quadrant before, but basically if you're working as an analyst or in the analytics field, which primarily is focused on reporting and the campaign optimization, there are like 4 main quadrants for your future development. So in the market, as well as for the business solving problems, if you want to hire a person or you're looking for the advice, you need to understand whom are you looking for. Basically, you can find the jack of all crafts, of course, but it's a very rare case. And it is very hard to find the person who knows literally everything, because it will require probably someone with 7 up to 10 years of experience working in the particular field, probably for your competitor who knows how it works on their end in order to apply it to your business. But the majority of the people you probably will be dealing with, it's data scientists, people who have applied skills, statistics, machine learning, like very advanced technical and data analytics skills, and that mix or blends with technology. So if you have something like, for example, products you can use for extracting the data effectively, for example, from Google Analytics, at the most granular level possible, data scientists will be the people who will be responsible for data product, data architecture, or the way that the data will be extracted from the most granular level from Google Analytics, for example, as the simplest example. If you have or looking for the person who understands the overall marketing strategy, what you're trying to take, and has the applied skills but cannot build data products, it will be just a data-driven influencer. So the person, the visionary who is back up his or her suggestion, ideas with the data, that person, all these people are essential to you. business. What really matters is to understand what kind of skills or what kind of person you require at the point of your business, based on, again, back to the example of the digital marketing transformation stages on the day one, where you are at those stages. If you're on a stage 5, maybe you have them all already, or maybe you just need to bring one person in or a consultant. But if you're on the stages 3 to 4, kind of like the midway through transitioning stages, you may need data-driven influencer first, and then once you transition to the stage number 5, bring the data scientist. So it all comes to your priorities, your long-term vision. Qualitative strategists, it's usually people who are not really good in analyzing the problem using machine learning algorithm, but they have the domain expertise in the strategy. So the people who are really into designing and saying that, okay, this thing would work, this thing wouldn't, because in my expertise or in the industry, that's kind of like a no-go or a good go. So mostly you can see people like data strategists who will be responsible for policies and giving you some ideas on how to craft your marketing strategies or marketing tactics around the strategies. And the analytical technologies. So the person who has expertise and the technology, mostly consultants, by the way, because they know how everything is progressing. They know how you can use a certain data. So they will be explaining and trying to provide you the point of view on how you can use this product in the future. Because essentially this product may be helpful for you, not tomorrow, but in a week or in a 1 year period. And the transitioning and the process of learning and bringing that new product into your company in order to synchronize and to align with all your processes and data governance policies, maybe a subject of 1 year, 6 months. So kind of like a time-consuming process. So just something to consider. So if we're talking about like solving marketing problems and of course marketing analytics using data science or data analytics experience, we are talking about 4 primarily aspects. So we are talking about optimization of the acquisition efforts. So response modeling, here you go, A/B test, offer testing, A/B test, market analysis, segmentation, customer journey, buyers personas, one part of the business. Then in other development, activation, cross-sell up and upsell, account profitability, campaign management, segmentation here, by the way, but it's also available here because you can segment your audience not only based on or per your acquisition efforts. So let's say which group of people are most likely be interacting with in order to interact with them effectively. So how can I segment all the people I'm interacting at the very top level of the sales funnel in order to take them on as my customers in the future effectively. But then once you have them as your customers, and here we talk about the retention. Retention and the segmentation is an ongoing thing because we need to make sure that it's campaigns or retention policies or relationship was established with the client. So we are retaining him, we are predicting his churn, and we are assuming that, okay, this person has been with us for 2 years and the offers we are offering him right now kind of underweighting the proposition he may or she may be receiving from our competitors. So we need to re-evaluate this person, encourage them to start using our products again because they've been using like some sort of demo products from our competitors for a while, and we can figure it out. And then it all comes again, it's stage 5 of the digital marketing transformation, the stage of the company, customer lifetime value, survey analysis, sales analysis. And frankly speaking, if you're on the last stage of the digital marketing transformation, it's not like, okay, you're not doing these 3 pillars anymore. No, in fact, it is a loop. But if you go, for example, you're on a stage 1, 2, your loop is smaller. You're working with these 2 pillars. If you transition to the stage of 3, 4, you're working with these three pillars ongoingly. And then if you transition, achieve the top level, then you're in the loop of the operations. You revise your market analysis once a year, once a quarter, etc. Again, based on depending on the specific of your business. At the same time, the same thing in terms of like development and retention policies. You're anticipating to see a churn in 2 years, so you will just check midway through because the segment size is not significant, just 100 people, which are comfortable for 5% of the entire population. Oh, sorry, of the entire client base. So we will check on them in a year because it's a small effort, but still it's an effort. It's a money coming in, coming out. So something to think of. So I believe you remember this magic quadrant. So if you talk about like the key focus areas, again, descriptive analytics, which we are doing right now, these two points. So where we will be jumping on later on. So we will start talking about digital analytics, and I will make some adjustments to our outline tomorrow because I want to bring you guys in to attribution modeling and the digital analytics overall. So day 3, day 4 will be primarily on the business intelligence and partially covering optimizations. Day 5, basically the list of optimizations, and day 6 optimizations, a bit of predictive modeling in terms of demand forecasting and retail. So we will kind of touch all of them in one. We will be covering all focus areas in one course throughout or across next remaining 4 days. Make sense? So talking about the problems or the things we are dealing with. So if we change it or change our scale slightly, so we can basically split all our problems into 4 main sections. If we are having some sort of like a tactic-driven approach, again, based on the stage of the digital marketing transformation of the companies, the campaign-driven, integrated, or the predictive, we have different challenges in every given step, as well as the metrics we are referring to. Acquisition efforts, okay, we are focused exclusively on new leads. Our advertising metrics or metrics which will reflect our acquisition performance. If it's something campaign driven, like, okay, we launched a new campaign, new product, which is supported and backed by tactics, we will be analyzing overall the ROI, marketing MRI, or return on ad spend for our product entirely. If it's something integrated, like the campaigns which lead to reactivate some people or to predict lifetime value or something else. So for example, like flowing in all our analytics in real time. And the primary challenge is for us is to find the right questions and the data, people with the right data skills. That probably the stage 3 and 4 of that digital marketing transition scheme. And the predictive, and just the predictive models, assuming that you have data warehouse where all your data stored, all the data cleaned, you have a very rapid way of cleaning up your data and bringing it into the business intelligence reporting tool like Tableau or, I don't know, Google Data Studio. So then you are working with the predicting, you're thinking for the future, how you can optimize the product based on all the data you're having, but at the same time, continuously reassessing these parts. So this part kind of like breaks into the problems you need or the challenges you have and the opportunities you can fix. You need data scientists, you need technical, but people with very proficient technical skills who can help you to improve your product, because the amount of the data is so significant that sometimes like the strategical things, they help you to acquire new customers, but it's not enough for you to adapt to the change because you sometimes cannot see that the change is coming. Our competitor introduced or for example, Disney and Netflix relationship. So Disney decided to launch their new platform, and therefore you need to think what kind of new TV shows you need to introduce in order to keep people engaged on Netflix. Just as a minor example, but the data science team in Netflix is tremendous, it's significant, and the things they do, they're impressive in terms of like the customization and the personalized experience, personalized movie selection. Yeah, it's something that all companies have to strive for. Overall, if we want to have a well-defined and successful marketing analytics practices employed or deployed in the company, we need to start with this kind of like a ladder or steps. So it all starts with the data hygiene. So data in, data out, and garbage in, garbage out. So if we have clean data or the right data coming in, standardized, categorized per our requirements, consolidated the way of the type of reporting per product, per person, and we are able to summarize the data and saying that, for example, Lennox Lewis 5 years ago requested this loan, but he didn't acquire it, but now he opened another account. Maybe we can offer him another product in 2 or 3 years because cross and upsell opportunities, of course. And secondly, we are seeing that there is some need in his personal funds or his personal life to buy or purchase a new car. So we can basically start automating, start coming up with something technical, with something data related, data backed, because data scientists were able to develop algorithms which will be saying that this person has something that we cannot notice or we cannot say just by speaking to that person, but we can identify that based on his or her behavior. And then it will secure our success in the long term, so we can have acquisition efforts well aligned, development efforts, ability to cross upsell, retention reactivation policies, and it all will be backed up and analyzed by the group of data scientists, analysts. And this loop will be recurring, just with the minor adjustments or these major adjustments based on the market conditions or the industry trends. And basically just the one framework which you guys may want to deploy moving forward, because it will be a very reoccurring thing and topic from now and on, because I believe today is a pretty last day when we work more like in a theoretical thing, and we will be slowly transitioning towards work in Excel and work with data. So something I want you guys to pay attention close, and basically maybe the question on the exam. So the framework the marketing analysts usually follow is the same as the data scientists follow when they're approaching data cleaning or data teaching and data interpretation problems. So it's called OSEMN, OSIN. I've heard like several different versions. It's more like a fight between SQL and SQL. So just don't be surprised. But overall, it's a step-by-step methodology you need to follow. First of all, you need to know how to obtain the data, which can be coming from any data source, and knowing the format of the data, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. Structured, if you have certain segments, views applied to it. Unstructured, just raw data, like a data dump from the system, which have no idea whatsoever, or semi-structured. So the data which have the foreign keys. So for example, you have two sets of data from CRM dump based on the transaction data, and the CRM data based on the personal information, name, first, last name, year of birth, location, and the client ID. But then in another data, you have client ID, history of transaction, number of records, etc., etc. So you would need to match that data. So semi-structured data, as an example. Scrambling and cleaning the data, which can consist of the remaining, the columns, missing value interpretation, etc. So this is kind of like the ongoing thing, because when you're dealing with the data, sometimes, especially invoicing data, may have a lot of missing values. So the agent was distracted, forgot to insert something, or made a typo, etc. So we need to know how to clean and how to fix that data. Missing values sometimes are useful, sometimes are not. It just all depends on Crisp DM. Yeah, I think so. I just don't, to be honest, I don't remember by heart, but as far as I remember, it is pretty much the same. So basically, just to align to make sure that your data is something you can work with. Data exploration. So again, correlation analysis, frequencies analysis, means, standard deviations, sum of squared errors, etc. So anything which can tell you how the data is distributed and how you can spot any sort of anomalies, very extreme high or low values, or values which are not irrelevant whatsoever. So for example, the data from CRM saying that for example, let's say mark is 0 or 2 years old, which probably means that one number was either missed or some sort of typo occurred. Modeling the data for prediction, forecasting, or clustering. The same way as we just took through for the clustering analysis. This person took survey or didn't take survey. This person took survey. His responses were as such. So that can be used for the clustering, but if all the previous steps are met. And then the data interpretation. So the idea on how to come up with the actual market segments descriptions in order to cross-match it to other personas and to support the idea or the creation of the decision maps based on the products we are considering introduce or considering modifying anytime soon. And basically the last slide for today, just change the order so I don't have a thank you slide for now. So any questions at this point before we jump back to the exercise? Okay, sweet. So let me first of all go back to our example with, one second, guys. So with the cluster analysis. So first of all, tell me how many people have it open right now. Or let's put it that way. Everyone, please open this cluster analysis example on your machines. So what essentially what we're gonna do? First of all, again, it's not the ideal. It's more like for giving you guys a sense on how to work and how the clustering potentially can work, because you can do clustering, R, Python, SAS, Excel, but the number of methodologies, the number of formats, frameworks, infrastructures, I believe it's about to be limitless. So, or we wouldn't even have enough time to cover through our course just one particular type and all particular versions of that type of the segmentation. So we will stick to this one, and please use it as a reference and ask questions if you have some. But for now, what I want you guys to do, first of all, we have 4 main categories which we came up with. So first of all, let's do next. For your particular personas and for your particular businesses, try to come up with something like legend map, encode or bring these values into oops. Bring these values into Excel and then specify the ranges or specify the characteristics you will be talking about. So for example, willingness to switch. We will just use the numbers here as the encoded response from 1 to 10. And then here, you can add some extra variables like income, Bum, bum, bum. Proximity distance. Sorry if a type was just typing simultaneously in Tokyo. Proximity distance from our store, etc. So it can be up to you. And then we will try to play around with the legends. So just give you a bit of sense. So overall, it depends on what you guys want to encode. If you're encoding something on a scale from 1 to 10 for all of the variables, and I believe it would be the case, it's easier to start to do with 1 as the weakest, basically saying that the negative and 10 are the most positive. So you can say have everything across the board. So for example, proximity distance from our store. Let's say 1 would be standing for 1 kilometer. 2 would be standing for 2 kilometers. But then we will change everything starting from 4 and so on. So for example, the 4 will be 4 to 5 kilometers, then number 5, 5 to 10. So again, we are just giving ranges. 6, probably 10 to 15. Then, oops, my bad. 7, 8. Let's put 15 to 30, 30 to 40. And then, for example, 40 to 50, and anything above 50. As a one possible example. Income, the same stuff. Under 5K, oops, dollars, then 5, 10K, 10K per household, 10, 20, and yada, yada, yada. So you come up with your own legend, but you just need to fix 2 values. I always encourage you to do it. The maximum value, which I usually say 150 plus for income, and the lowest value under 5K. Or basically you also can use 1 as completely unemployed, so no income coming in. So 0. It's also possible. So the encodement here would help you out because you will see that the difference between person who is making 5,000 and is not making at all, it's not really significant. And maybe the person who makes less than $5,000 is almost the same as a person who is not working or sitting on or having welfare support. So the frequency of the shopping, importance of the brand, price, and willingness to switch, you guys can come up with. In the meantime, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna include proximity distance from our store here. That's the only matter I want to include for now. And basically use some just random numbers I'm gonna type in here, just to see how our segments may be different from now and on. So you remember the results of the output, the best output was of the 5, 1 second. Yeah, the best output was of the 5 clusters. Oh, you see it's adjusting automatically already. So basically you guys should have the original version, and I'm already having the revised version. So you see that our original sum of squared error was 30 something, it's already 64. So, and this is, yep, the lowest still. So the segmentation maps 20, 30, pretty much the same ratio. And if you're talking about the charts, you see how well those are pretty much aligned all together. So that if probably not the lowest sum of squared errors, we would go use segment 4 because there is better alignment. If again the height of this this measure of this segment would be approximately at this level, but still we will go in this situation with the 5 segments is our option. And then basically we all come to the interpretation of the output clusters. So what I usually tend to do if I have the extra screen, because it's easier to work, I just put this table second, imagine map somewhere here. And then what I'm saying essentially that, for example, segment 1, and again, we're considering 1 as the lowest and 10 as the highest, 1 as negative, 10 as the absolute positive. So let me just write it down here. 10, 1, 10, lowest, negative, 10, highest, positive. So for example, segment 1, let's go and start talking. Willingness to switch. Below, for example, below the average, but still it's higher than 25 for the first percentile. So I would say below the average willingness to switch. Then importance of the price, average or neutral, again, depending on your encoding. So I would say in this case, probably, yeah, I would say the average price sensitivity. Then importance of the brand, not really important. So I would say low importance. Then frequency of shopping, close to average, and the average in this case, for example, may be like, if we deciding on the most maximum number of purchases per year, 10. So I would say I will just put the number like 4, close to average 4 transactions per year. And then proximity distance from our store, if we encoded that into number 2, between 2 and 3 kilometers. Side note, walking distance. Okay, so we got the description of the first segment, and we do the same exactly for the next 5 segments. And then what happens? Imagine that we have all our personas descriptions and we have the customer journey map. So if we're talking about the discussion at some point about the price that the person is hesitant to buy because we're offering high price, we're just looking at the number of people within this segment, and I can tell you right away. Segment 1. Segment 1, 10%, segment 1, 3 people. So basically significant, yes, it's a, let's keep it like on the scale, on the percentage scale rather than on the numerical. That 1/3 of our customers saying that our price is affecting their decisions. So if you want to increase the profitability, for example, these 2 segments, they're completely fine with our prices, just assuming, so 40%. But we want to acquire more people, we will work towards either bringing prices down or changing the prices or the product specification for this segment in order to make him or them more inclusive. So understanding, using our customer journey map survey data, which product specifications are crucial for their business, which of them are not essentially crucial, similarly to importance of the brand section. So are we using more branding, messaging, or any branding features? And then it will affect our pricing. So we can provide them limited service, for example, software as a software. Certain features are not available for you, but everything you really care about will be there for better price than other competitors or for slightly higher price. But because we are or you are doing on average 4 transactions per year, we will provide you a customized tier approach. So instead of having like 4 tests or 4 different surveys available for example, screening candidates as some sort of like a ATS, automatic tracking applicant system, you will be having like just a 4. And if you want to bump the number even higher, you would need to pay this price for XYZ number of tests or to jump higher to the new tier. So does it make any sense? So far, so good? Okay, sweet. Thank you, guys. So then what I want you guys to do, so first of all, for the next 10 minutes, because you already start working with the personas and the customer decision journey, continue on working with the personas, then we will review. Oh yeah, completely. You're talking about the template? Absolutely. Just insert whatever the number of variables you want to analyze. For example, for the sake of this exercise, I believe it's 10. So here we have 3 and 5. No, so it's 8. So just populate all of them, define whatever you do. The clustering is just using 2. 1 second, let me just reread it. You mean this particular template or overall? Sorry, I'm not quite following what you're trying to say. Yeah, absolutely. It just all depends on how much data you have. So if you insert 5, 6, 10, absolutely possible. But the thing is that the segmentation and the clustering may take a bit more time for your machine or for your Excel program on your machine to process everything. So again, you're just limited with the computation power of your machine. I don't remember. As far as I remember, by default, I provided 4 variables, but maybe wrong. So if it's by default 2 variables, feel free to add whatever the numbers you want, but just remember, stay on the scale and don't use like a binary response options. Male, female, 1, 2, or 1, 0, or something which is really categorical like iPhone, Apple, something which is not existing on the same scale because it's not like measurable, so to say. It's more like a categorical, which, for example, values of 1.5 wouldn't make any sense. So if you encode iPhone users as number 1 and Android user as number 2, this cluster analysis tool will find the average 1.5, which wouldn't make any sense whether those people are iPhone users or Android users. So in order to have effective, well, it depends on the, back to your question, it depends on your question and the proximity or the sum of the standard squares it founds based on the actual data. So it can be all the time different based again on your data. So it's not about the template, it's about the data in it. If you play around with the numbers, you may get different outputs, or you may have the same outputs all the time. Again, whatever you're putting in inside. Plus this, if you're talking about this map and everything else, there is a certain methodology need to be followed on the way you work with this map. I just showed you, oh, with this template, I just showed you like a very high overview, which you can replicate right now. So, okay, guys. So for now, please continue with your buyer personas description, and then let's do it for another 10 minutes. So if you have some questions, you have the skeleton built on, and then what I would ask you to do, use your own judgment, your ideas to populate the values in this template, so we can start working through it together and making sure that you are able and comfortable of writing market segment descriptions. Cool. Victor, to your question, which format should we submit personas in the customer journey? Frankly speaking, whatever guys work for you. So if it's something, I don't know, like drawing, some sort of like pictures or sketches you draw using the pencil, just take a picture, make sure you write name on it, and send it to me. Or if it's PDF file or a PPT file, PowerPoint presentation file, send it to me as well. Everything works. I just need to see what you guys were doing. And don't forget, if you're interested in getting the feedback, please provide the feedback if you can, etc., etc. If not, no feedback required. Thank you. Max, no issues. And guys, if you want to change the industry because you found it boring or having other issues coming up with ideas, completely. At the end of the day, what I care is about the end product. Everything else in between is fine. Um, so Kirill, I mean the sketch, if you just have something written or drawing on it on the list of paper, I'm just expecting to say like the full idea of what you're having for in terms of your customer journey map per touch point, ideas, emotions, and stages. So something similar to the template I showed earlier. If you have 1-2 bullet points, not a problem. Again, it's just more for me to understand what's your idea and what the approach you're taking. If you're interested in the feedback. If not, completely fine. Feel free to send me a sketch. Well, try to craft it first, and then you will decide how much or how many details are enough. Let's call it that way, because I don't know which example you are picking, and maybe your example is very straightforward, or maybe you go to something complex. So again, something which will be telling me about the stages, touch points, persons or customers' emotions at that level, and the ways to improve it, or ways to modify our interactions via touch points. Yeah, no worries. All good. I will check it out later on. So in case if you guys don't have any information in your database about job, career, family, income, location, so it is something that you can improve moving on. But because, for example, for the salons, I believe there will be some sort of like the interactions going on. So with, for example, the person who delivers services, as well as between your customer. So you can talk to the person who most in touch or most communicates with the customers, pick her assumptions, and then try to think on how to improve the processes of data collection. Moving on. So for now, just use the overall assumption you have at this point. That's a very good question. Okay, 2 minutes, guys. Maybe other questions regarding personas? Oh, sure. Let me actually add the section. So like in an hour or so, I will add the instruction slide to the homework so you guys can send it. I would say, Victor, back to your question, how much detailed persona should be. Start with basic points which are included in a template. Oh, no, Simon, don't worry about that. Just send it before the classes tomorrow. That's totally fine. Again, I'm not expecting you guys to spend like more than 20 minutes doing this, so don't go crazy. Again, it's more for participation marks, so I can back up your story that you've been presented, because I'll not be able sometimes to monitor all of you. And basically just try to go through slides 10, 11, and 12. So not necessarily, but if you like, the main object would be 10, 11, 12. I'm just gonna include it to instructions. Okay, guys, let's focus on segmentation analysis for now. I will finalize the instruction and send a note once it becomes available in the Moodle. So for the segmentation analysis, I just want you guys, first of all, to become more comfortable with writing those descriptions. So for example, pick the segment based on the current data as it is right now in the output clusters tab. And for example, the segment one was already described. So pick any of segment 2, 3, 4, or 5 and start describing them in a similar way as I was doing on this tab. Cool? So then if you have the questions, you can ask me in the meantime. And we have, okay, 4 minutes left. So, okay, let's try to get as further as we can. And then maybe I can answer some questions right now. And if not, we will pick it up from tomorrow, at some point tomorrow. No, I will just post the announcement in Moodle. So you will automatically receive the email. So technically, yes, email will be sent out at some point by the system. Guys, 2 more minutes left. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. All right, guys, our time is up. So basically, don't be concerned or stressed out about the homework. Again, it's for participation mark and for the feedback if you want to obtain some. So I will send you the instructions within like probably next 30 minutes or an hour or so, because I just want to finalize the changes I made to the presentation today and to make it available in Moodle. So you can download it, go back again and upload that sample sizing file calculation so you can work on your own at home, or if you want to check. Any questions before we wrap up for today? All right, thank you guys. Talk to you tomorrow then. Have a great night.